Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Freemasonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. I'm your host, Brother Robert Johnson. This is episode 183. In the news this week, I just wanted to say that I will be back on TMR this upcoming week. I have a new work schedule, which is allowing me to do all kinds of great things like see my kids. So if you work evenings, I'm sure you know where I'm coming from. I'm very excited about the new schedule. Nothing is going to change about this show. It will still be out weekly. I also wanted to mention that this week we have Brother Steve Harrison back on the show with another great segment. And we, again, if you didn't know, have a new sponsor, FreemasonTees.com. So check those guys out if you haven't. Use promo code WCY at checkout for 10% off. And this week's paper comes to us from the Illinois Lodge of Research. So we'll get right into that. Now, as I'm flipping through some of my old editions of the Illinois Lodge of Research proceedings and papers, I came across one which is Volume 7, Number 1, and it's on page 15 of the 1993 printout. And again, if you hear a little bit of paper rustling, that's because I'm reading this off an actual sheet of paper instead of electronically, which is a change from what I usually do. And so what we'll do with this is I will scan it, and it will be in the PDF section of the extras, and you'll be able to download that. The Forgotten Order of Bucks by Homer Zumwalt. In the days when Masonry was getting a foothold in England, there was plenty of competition, just as there is today. But the competition was of a different nature than faces of our Masons today. If you can let your mind wander back to about the year 1720, and you lived in London, you no doubt would have belonged to one of these societies. Every tavern had one, or more clubs or societies which met there. Some had a bit of a secrecy and mystery about them, while others pretended to lay open its secrets to the world, and would meet just to argue the great problems of humanity. The names of some of these clubs were very tricky, such as the Ancient Society of Gormogons, Grand Volgi, Gregorians, Ubiquarians, Jacobites, Lumber Troopers, Freemasons, the Bucks Club, plus a number of others. Most of these clubs and societies were short-lived and lasted only a generation or two, for they had no great purpose except to eat, drink, sing, smoke, have fun, and have an evening out with the fellows. Others, however, were more serious in their purpose and consisted of a membership of a select company of responsible people which strove for specific goals. Freemasonry took one of the latter approaches and was built on a more firm foundation, and as a result has outlived all of its rivals. One of the societies that rivaled Freemasonry for quite a number of years was called the Noble Order of Bucks, and copied much from Freemasonry at that time. Since this order gave the Masons the most concern, it is the one society I would like to call your attention. It is difficult to arrive at the exact year of the formation of the Bucks Club or Society of Bucks, but it was sometime before the year 1722 or 1723. This time in history is within a year or two of the time of the first printed copies of what we now call the Old Charges of Freemasonry, and about the time of the publication of Anderson's Constitutions of Masonry. There is no doubt that Freemasonry had been established well ahead of this date, and led the way for all the others to imitate. Freemasonry was popular with the ruling class, and at this time in history was ruled over by the Duke of Montague, and he was followed by a long line of noble Grand Masters. These clubs or societies steadily grew in stature and public favor as a recognized part of the London social class at that time. Imitators only rise when position and fashion is reached, and imitators generally take the same form as rivals. So it was with these other societies many called their club a lodge, and the head of the body by the title of Master or Grand Master or Most Noble Grand. The title Most Noble Grand was the one taken by the Society of Bucks. The Bucks arranged themselves into lodges sometime between 1730 and 1756, and formed a Grand Society or Grand Lodge of Bucks sometime between 1780 and 1800, similar in the plan the original Grand Lodge of England. In London proper, a great number of these Buck Lodges existed, which gave the Masonic Order of that time some trouble. A number of articles and letters published by the Adventurer in London show the rivalry that existed at the time. Since most of the meetings were held in the taverns and pubs, it is only natural that a lot of drinking and singing took place at each meeting of both organizations. A number of songs were written especially for the different orders. One Masonic song written by Brother Lou Dermott and published in the first edition of Ahiman Raison in 1756, page 150, brings out the rivalry between the Masons and the Bucks. One verse of the song goes as follows, quote, the horned buck and Gallican, as the monkey imitates the man. Their clubs do lodges call, while ancient masons know full well, no fools like those amongst them dwell. No, no, nor never shall. End quote. In later printed issues of the Human Raison, the song is printed, but this particular verse is omitted. One of the London publications of that era mentioned previously was called The Adventurer. In issue number 71 on July 10th, 1753, there appeared this letter directed at one of the local church ministers. Quote, Sir, in one of your late sermons I am informed, for I never read myself, that you have presumed to speak with ridicule and contempt of the noble order of bucks. 7 of us agreed last night at the King's Arms that if you dared to be guilty of the like imprudence a second time, we would come in a body and unite your garret, burn your pocketbook of hints, throw your papers ready written for the press into a jakes, and drive you out into the Strand in your tattered nightgown and slippers. And you may guess what a fine spectacle the mob will think of an animal that so seldom sees the sun as you. I assure you that next to a day at Broughton's, or the damnation of a new play, the truest joy of our fraternity is to hunt an author. Yours, Bob Whippleclean. End quote. Again, in the October 13th, 1753 issue of The Adventurer, number 98, and again October 20th, 1753, we learn of what were the stages of progression within the Order of the Bucks. The progression consists of 8 degrees, namely the Greenhorn, Jemmy, Smart, Honest Fellow, Joyous Spirit, Buck, and Blood. Whether this was written as actual fact or ridicule, we do not know, but the writer of the article professes to have been passed through the whole series. He further writes, quote, Thus I reached the summit of modern glory, and had just acquired the distinction of Blood when I was arrested for an old debt of £300 and thrown into the King's Bench prison. End quote. Evidently, something new was added in 1754 with the Connoisseur issue number 22, June 27, 1754, appeared the following, quote, The present race of bucks, bloods, and free thinkers are but the spawn of the Mohawks and the Hellfire Club. End quote. These 2 clubs distinguished themselves by playing the most wild and extravagant pranks in quest of adventure. The Mohawks and Hellfire Thinkers were in existence before the organization of the Bucks, and evidently became a part of that organization at a later date. Evidently, the quote-unquote fun and frolic was toned down by the Bucks by this time, as shown by its adopted motto, quote, Innocence with Freedom, and the instructions given to the newly made Bucks to promote good fellowship, freedom of conversation, and innocent mirth. By 1759, the title was changed to the Society of Bucks, and Monday, June 4th, 1759, they made an attempt at a better relationship with the ruling class by advertising a celebration of the birthday of George, Prince of Wales, who became George III. On July 25th, 1759, they held a large dinner in his honor. It doesn't say whether the King George attended or not, but nothing can be found to indicate that he ever belonged to the organization. By 1887, the Noble Order of Bucks listed 19 active lodges in London as printed in the publication Keystone. The last printed mention of that order appeared in the sporting magazine January 1802 and referred to the Bucks as, quote, the United Order, for they had combined into a body under that name, which they also called a Grand Lodge, establishing a quarterly committee and a Grand Secretary. The order had a published constitution very similar to the Masonic Grand Lodge, and as the Masons used the expression making a mason, the rival society used the term making a buck. Their ceremony was not secret and given in full with words, signs, and etc. for all to see, while the mason's ceremony was supposed to have been kept secret. We have to ask ourselves the question, since both Masons and Bucks were quite strong in this period, why did Masonry survive and the Bucks go by the wayside? The answer is not known, but one story told by author Harry Rylands in the 1890 edition of Cotore Coronati, which might have some small influence from a political standpoint. The incident took place in Pall Mall in England, where the king, then regent, was walking with a friend. They met Brummel, a prominent buck, of whom he took no notice, but Brummel, not to be outdone, called the common male friend aside for a moment, and in an audible whisper asked him, "By the way, who was your fat friend?" There is very little written about the history of the Bucks, probably because of the short time and popularity. However, there are in the British Museum several books bearing the title of Buck's Delight, Buck's Bottle, Companion, Buck's Delight or Vocal Companion, and Humorous Bottle, and Hunting Songs, all including Buck's drinking and hunting songs. A manuscript of the Constitution Book of the Ancient and Noble Order of Bucks is preserved in the family of deceased brother W. Harry Rylands of London. In reading this manuscript as published in Volume 3, Cotore Coronati, 1890, I find a number of similarities to the Grand Lodge of England, while other parts vary. 1. They each had a book of constitutions, which had similarities. 2. They each had a plan of order from the Grand Master down through the lodges. 3. They each gave a series of degrees. 4. They each had a symbol for their stations in lodge. 5. They each wore the regalia of the order while attending meetings indicating their rank. 6. They both took a series of oaths. 7. They each had a series of songs or odes. 8. They each had mottos to describe the order. For the Freemasons, friendship, morality, and brotherly love, faith, hope, and charity. For the Bucks, unanimity is the strength of society. Be merry and wise. Freedom with innocence. Industry produceth wealth. Why the Bucks dropped out of existence, I do not know, but they were one of the many clubs of the past century consisting of poets, wits, and players, which has brought fame to so many taverns in Old England. From the history, I doubt if they could be called specially a drinking club, or a musical club, or one to promote humanity, but I would rather class them as a body of men interested in and largely employing their time upon leisure, hunting, and sport, as well as improving the mind. The Bucks and other organizations have existed for a time and then went out of existence. We as Masons should take a lesson from the history and work a little harder to preserve our ancient craft. References: 1. Transactions of the Lodge of Cotore Coronati, Volume 3, 1890. 2. Ahimon Razon, Masonic Book Club, 1972, and number 3, The Constitutions of the Freemasons, Masonic Book Club, 1971. Again, that's from the Volume 7, number 1 issue of the Illinois Lodge of Research. Now, in this paper, you heard me reference the Gormogons, or Society of Gormogons, earlier. I wrote a piece about that specific group on the Midnight Freemasons. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's actually quite interesting. That particular group existed to defame Masons. They would make you publicly renounce your membership because they claimed to have the ancient secrets, even older than Masonry, and it was just a big practical joke on Masons who wanted deeper secrets. It's actually pretty sad, and in addition to this, it still is being used today on a website, and their logo is a picture of Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. It's kind of a funny website today. Again, I'll throw the links to that in the show notes. All right, now it comes the time in the show where I ask you to support the show. You can support the show, of course, 3 ways: with our applications, through shopping, and PayPal donations. If you choose to get the application, that is a $2 donation, and you can get it for your Android phone, your Apple phone, or your Windows phone. What you get with that is the ability to stream the show anywhere you are. You can save it. You can listen to the show on airplane mode. You can, most importantly, get the access to the papers that we read on the show, as well as wallpapers for your mobile device that are Masonically themed. And on occasion, we put some extras, either a video or a complete book via PDF form. Links to all of the apps are in the Support the Show tab on the website, wcypodcast.com. As well as that, you can check out the shopping links. So if you're going to do some shopping either through onnit.com, where you can get any number of healthy living supplements or workout equipment, just use the promo code WCY at checkout. You'll get 10% off, and they'll send a little bit back to the show to help us out. You can also check out freemasonryart.com for all of the coolest Masonic artwork you can imagine. It's all done right here in America by none other than Brother Juan Sepulveda of the Winding Stairs podcast and a co-host on the Masonic Roundtable. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. And check out our newest sponsor, freemasontees.com. They've got some really cool designs up there. I know my favorite right now is the Illinois Freemason shirt. It's really cool. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up myself. And again, if you use the promo code WCY at checkout for any of those, you will get 10% off of your order. And last but not least is our PayPal direct donation. So whether you donate $1 or $2, all of this goes right into the show, and it helps keep the lights on. It helps so that every past episode of the show is available all the time. We pay for those hosting fees. One last thing you can do if you are interested, you can go to wcypodcast.com and you can purchase a WCY button pin modeled after our die-cast pin that ran one time. We're hoping to get a second run of those going again. However, right now I do have button pins. They have the old school safety pin button on the back, and they're more like campaign style buttons of the 50s or 60s, really. And if you are interested in those, I will send you one for a donation of $5. Now, you need to go through wcypodcast.com and click on limited edition shop and buy a button through there. That way I get your address and everything so I can send that out to you. You're basically buying the pin for $5, and I will ship those anywhere worldwide. Even if I lose a couple dollars, it doesn't really matter. The point is to spread that light and to be a neat little pin for you guys to have. And it's not show branded. It just says Whence Came You. So it's Masonic, but there's nothing on it that says podcast or anything like that. And with that, we're going to go right into the Masonic Minute with Illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison.
All of us have seen those lists of Freemasons who were presidents of the United States. Altogether now, let's name them. There are 14. Washington, Monroe, Jackson, Polk, Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, Garfield, McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, Taft, Harding, Franklin Roosevelt, Truman, and Ford. But is that list complete? Or are there as many as 3 more men who should be part of that exclusive group? Think back to the first time you heard someone address you as brother. It was right after you took your obligation as an entered apprentice. That's right, an entered apprentice is, without question, a Freemason. And on October 30th, 1937, Lyndon Baines Johnson took that obligation. Even as an entered apprentice, LBJ was a Freemason and belongs on the list. Then, there is the mostly overlooked case of the man who, on February 11th, 1795, received a letter from John Francis Mercer, Governor of Maryland, who said, "I have had no opportunity of congratulating you before on your becoming a Freemason, a very ancient and honorable fraternity." He sent it to the man who would become the 4th President of the United States, James Madison. Not only that, but John Dove, an early Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Virginia, said Madison was one of the original founders of Hiram Lodge 59 in 1800 and became a charter member. William R. Denslow, in his iconic book 10,000 Famous Freemasons, also suggests Madison was a member of that lodge. Unfortunately, the lodge became dormant in 1814 and its records were lost. Perhaps most telling, however, were the attacks made on Madison during the anti-Masonic period. It's safe to conclude just about the only thing not confirmed about the Masonic status of James Madison, most likely brother James Madison, is the name of his original lodge. In addition to Madison and Johnson, we have the odd case of a brother whose Masonic status is not in doubt, but his presidential status is. Riding along the winding back roads of northwest Missouri, about a half hour from my home, I sometimes stop at an old cemetery just outside Plattsburgh. Right inside the entrance is a series of arrows pointing to a specific grave. That grave has a compelling brass marker which proclaims the man buried there was President of the United States for one day, March 4th, 1849. The town also has a towering statue of the man proclaiming his presidency. On occasion, I've even gone up the road across the Missouri River and visited the world's smallest presidential library, which was built in his honor. The library is located in Atchison, Kansas, which was named after the man, David Rice Atchison. Senator David Rice Atchison, a member of Platt Lodge number 56 in Missouri, was President pro tem of the United States Senate when Zachary Taylor was elected president. Inauguration Day in 1849 fell on a Sunday, and the devout Taylor refused to attend his swearing-in on the Sabbath, rescheduling it for the following day. Taylor's vice president, Millard Fillmore, followed suit, and James K. Polk's term had expired the previous day, technically leaving the presidency vacant. Constitutionally, Atchison was next in line for the office. Hearing this quirky bit of news, Atchison's friend, Judge Willie Magnum, and a group of others descended on Atchison's house and tramped up to his bedroom in the middle of the night. There, with the confused Atchison in his nightgown, Judge Magnum administered the oath of office. Brother Atchison went back to sleep and spent the bulk of his presidency resting and reading in his home. Historians almost universally agree that Atchison was not officially the president. It is also true, however, that neither the outgoing President James K. Polk nor Taylor were president on March 4th. Duly inaugurated, who better than Brother Atchison to fill the gap? If you're not willing to agree that he was at least ex officio president, just don't mention it around Atchison, Kansas, or Plattsburgh, Missouri. So there you have it. Depending on your acceptance of historical facts, suppositions, and a little truth stretching, perhaps our lists of Masonic presidents should include 17 names, with maybe an asterisk beside those of Lyndon Johnson, James Madison, and David Rice Atchison. For the Whence Came You podcast, I'm Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
All right. Again, another excellent piece by Brother Stephen L. Harrison. Just please remember, there will be links in the show notes, but you have to get the book, Freemasonry Crosses the Mississippi and Tales from the Craft. Tales from the Craft is outstanding. It's an excellent piece that you can just open up and read a few pages about a number of different Masonic subjects. It's great for lodge education. It's great to read through and come up with ideas for writing your own Masonic papers. It's just a great book, and you guys really should check it out. Again, they're both on Amazon.com, and Freemasonry Crosses the Mississippi might be out of print currently. If you want to get that book, and there may be a way for you to do that, we'll contact Brother Stephen L. Harrison and we'll figure something out. But Tales from the Craft, it is available in ebook, and it may be available in print very soon. I know he is working on it. I do have a print copy, but I don't know how widely spread those are. So we'll go right into our famous Freemason of the Week, John Theophilus Desaguliers, born March 12th, 1683, and he passed away the 29th of February, 1744. And this guy's way in the past for this one, but is quite interesting. He's a French-born British natural philosopher, clergyman, engineer, and a Freemason who was elected to the Royal Society in 1714 as experimental assistant to Isaac Newton. So he had studied at Oxford and later popularized Newtonian theories and their practical applications in public lectures. Desaguliers' most important patron was James Bridges, the first Duke of Chandos. As a Freemason, Desaguliers was instrumental in the establishment of the first Grand Lodge formed in London 1717 and served as their third Grand Master. He was a member of Masonic Lodge number 4, which met at the Rumour and Grapes Tavern, close to his home in Westminster. This lodge joined with 3 other lodges on 24th of June 1717 to form what would become the premier Grand Lodge of England. The new Grand Lodge grew rapidly as more lodges joined, and Desaguliers is remembered as being instrumental in its early success. He became the 3rd Grand Master in 1719 and was later 3 times Deputy Grand Master. He helped James Anderson draw up the rules in the constitutions of the Freemasons, published in 1723, and he was active in the establishment of Masonic charity. During a lecture trip to the Netherlands in 1731, Desaguliers was initiated into Freemasonry. Francis Duke of Lorraine, 1708 to 1765, who later became Holy Roman Emperor. Desaguliers also presided when Frederick, Prince of Wales, became a Freemason in 1737, and he additionally became a chaplain to the prince. Now, John Desaguliers is also credited as inventing the planetarium, of all things. That's it for this week. Please find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Whence. Check us out on Google Plus at the email address wcypodcast@gmail.com. You can email me also at that address or at admin@wcypodcast.com. Again, if you would like a button pin, go to wcypodcast.com, click on Limited Edition Shop, and buy a pin through there for $5. It ships anywhere in the world for $5, all in one rate. So check that out. And that's it, guys. Until next week, stay on the level. For Whence, I'm Robert Johnson.